A war between Israel and Turkey would be a catastrophic event, as both countries are powerful military actors in the region, and such a conflict would have significant geopolitical and humanitarian implications. Here's a speculative day-by-day breakdown of the first 6 months if Israel and Turkey were to go to war. Month 1, initial outbreak. Day 1 to 7, the trigger. An incident, such as a confrontation in the Eastern Mediterranean or a clash involving their military forces in Syria, sparks hostilities. Israel launches airstrikes targeting Turkish military installations and naval assets. Turkey responds with missile and drone strikes aimed at Israeli air bases and cities. Both countries mobilize their armed forces, with Israel activating its reserves and Turkey deploying its Navy and Air Force to strategic locations. NATO and the international community urgently call for de-escalation, but initial attempts fail. Day 8 to 14, escalation. Turkey targets Israeli civilian infrastructure, including ports and power stations, using long-range missiles and drone technology. Israel retaliates with a campaign of airstrikes on Turkish military facilities in southern Turkey and Turkish-controlled areas in Syria. Naval clashes occur in the eastern Mediterranean as Turkish and Israeli ships engage. Civilian casualties increase in both countries, with major cities like Tel Aviv and Istanbul under threat from missile attacks. Days 15 to 21. Regional fallout. Iran and other regional players monitor the situation, with some groups like Hezbollah increasing their activities against Israel. Greece and Cyprus express support for Israel due to existing maritime disputes with Turkey, while other NATO members push for restraint from both sides. Turkish military bases in northern Cyprus become potential targets for Israeli airstrikes, further escalating tensions. Day 22 to 30, humanitarian crisis. Both countries experience significant civilian casualties as missiles and airstrikes continue. Refugee flows increase as people flee conflict zones in Syria and the Turkish-Israeli border areas. Humanitarian organizations struggle to access affected regions as hostilities disrupt transportation and communication networks. Month 2, entrenchment and naval engagements day, 31 to 60, naval battles and cyber warfare. Turkey attempts to blockade Israeli ports, deploying its navy to the eastern Mediterranean. Israel conducts coordinated attacks on Turkish ships and naval bases, while Turkey retaliates with drone and missile strikes targeting Israeli naval assets. Both countries engage in cyber warfare, targeting critical infrastructure and causing blackouts, financial disruptions, and communication outages. NATO increases diplomatic pressure on Turkey as some member states voice concern over Turkey's actions. Israel receives diplomatic support from the US and Greece. Days 61 to 90, proxy involvement. Turkey increases support for Palestinian groups in Gaza and Syria-based militias, leading to intensified attacks on Israeli border areas. Israel steps up its cooperation with Kurdish forces in northern Syria and Iraq, launching covert operations to disrupt Turkish influence in those areas. The U.S. deploys additional naval assets in the region to protect shipping routes and prevent further escalation. Oil prices spike due to threats in the eastern Mediterranean and the instability in Syria, impacting global markets. Month 3, diplomatic efforts and stalemate day, 91 to 120, international mediation attempts. The UN, US, and Russia push for a ceasefire, with European powers, especially Greece, becoming increasingly involved in mediation efforts. Turkish and Israeli economies begin to feel the strain of sustained conflict, with disrupted trade routes and infrastructure damage causing shortages and inflation. Public pressure grows in both countries for a diplomatic resolution as protests erupt against the continued violence. Days 121 to 150, stalemate. Neither side gains a decisive advantage, leading to a military and political stalemate. Proxy battles continue in Syria, Gaza, and the eastern Mediterranean, with both sides using drones and cyber attacks to gain leverage. Diplomatic channels remain open, but progress is slow as each side demands significant concessions. Month 4 to 6, ceasefire negotiations or continued conflict. Days 151 to 180, ceasefire talks and continued tensions. Ongoing diplomatic efforts from NATO, the UN, and regional players like Egypt aim to broker a ceasefire. Turkey and Israel agreed to a temporary ceasefire, halting direct military engagements but maintaining their readiness for further conflict. Sporadic skirmishes continue in proxy theaters like Syria and Gaza, while naval standoffs persist in the eastern Mediterranean. International organizations begin sending humanitarian aid to affected regions, and talks continue to create a lasting peace agreement.